I, 34 male, am a combat veteran, 2 tours in Afghanistan, and I have a German Shepherd named Ranger who has kept me alive more times than I can count. I have post-traumatic epilepsy, seizures that hit without warning. Sometimes in the middle of the night, sometimes while I'm making coffee. Ranger is trained to detect the neurological changes that happen before a seizure, usually about 10 to 15 minutes before onset. He presses his full body weight against my leg. That's my signal. I sit down, get somewhere safe, call someone if needed. Without him, I've cracked my head on a countertop. I've woken up on my kitchen floor not knowing what year it was. With him, I haven't had a single unmanaged episode in 2 years. He is not a pet. He is not a cute addition to my apartment. He is a federally protected medical accommodation that breathes, and I need you to understand that before any of the rest of this makes sense. My girlfriend and I had been together for 14 months. She moved in 6 months ago. She knew about Ranger before our first date. I'm always upfront about it because I have to be. Ranger is non-negotiable. She didn't just accept it. She seemed to genuinely love him at first. On our 3rd date, she scratched him behind the ears and called him the most handsome boy in the room. I remember thinking this one actually gets it. I was wrong. The shift was slow. That's how these things work. Slow enough that you keep telling yourself it's not happening.
First it was small stuff.
Ranger's hair on the couch. His food bowl being an eyesore. Him taking up too much of the bed. He sleeps at the foot because if I seize at night, he needs to be close enough to respond. That's just the reality. She started closing the bedroom door when I wasn't paying attention, and I'd find him sitting in the hallway looking confused. I'd open the door.
She'd sigh.
We wouldn't say anything. Then the comments got sharper. He stares at me. He makes me uncomfortable. I feel like a guest in my own home because of that dog. Every single time I explained calmly, patiently, that Ranger isn't optional. That this isn't a preference or a quirk, it's a medical necessity. She'd nod. She'd say she understood. And then 2 weeks later, we'd be having the exact same conversation wearing different clothes. The night it all broke open was a normal Tuesday. Pasta, some show on in the background, Ranger at my feet like always. She put her fork down in the middle of dinner and looked at me with this expression I didn't recognize at first. Measured. Decided. Like she'd been rehearsing it. I need you to choose, she said. Me or the dog. I put my fork down slowly. That's not a choice. I'm serious. So, am I? Ranger alerts me to seizures. If I don't have him and I go down the wrong way, I could die. That's not me being dramatic. That's the medical reality. Other people manage epilepsy without dogs. And other people manage diabetes without insulin.
Good for them. She didn't like that.
Her jaw got tight. You always hide behind the disability thing. I looked at her for a moment. Then I said, very quietly, get out of my apartment.
She left.
I actually thought that was it. I thought she'd cool down, realize how far over the line she'd gone. Maybe come back with an apology. Instead, the next morning, my apartment management called me. The property manager's voice had that careful tone people use when they've been handed something uncomfortable. She told me a complaint had been filed.
About my dog.
That he had behaved aggressively toward a resident, specifically that he had lunged at and threatened my girlfriend in the common hallway. I sat down. Ranger pressed against my leg right at that moment. Not a seizure warning, just dog instinct, like he knew something was off. When was this supposed to have happened? I asked. The manager gave me a time. I had been in my apartment with Ranger at that exact time. My girlfriend had either just left or was still there. Ranger had not been in the hallway. He is never in the hallway unattended. That's not how service animals work. I need to inform you, the manager continued, that if the complaint is substantiated, building policy would require the animal to be removed. He's a service animal, I said. Federally protected under the Americans with Disabilities Act and the Fair Housing Act. You cannot require the removal of a service animal based on an unverified complaint. You cannot apply standard pet behavior policies to a task-trained service animal. I'd strongly recommend your building's legal counsel review this before anyone takes any further steps. Silence. I wasn't aware of the service animal designation. I disclosed it when I signed my lease. It's in my file. He's documented with the VA. She cleared her throat. I'll need to look into this further. Please do. And when you do, you'll find the complaint is false. I'd like a written copy of the complaint and the name of the person who filed it for my own records. She gave me everything I asked for, because at that point she clearly realized the building was standing in quicksand. The complaint was in my girlfriend's name, filed at 8:47 that morning, less than 12 hours after I told her to leave. I sat with that paper in my hand for a long time. She had tried to use lease enforcement, cold, bureaucratic, impersonal, to take Ranger from me. She knew what he was. She knew what his absence would mean for my health. And she did it anyway, because I wouldn't pick her over my own survival. I need you to sit with the specific calculation of that. This wasn't heat of the moment. You don't fill out a formal written complaint in a heat of the moment. She sat down, thought it through, wrote it up, and submitted it. That's a decision made in cold blood. That's when I stopped feeling hurt and started getting organized.
I've been in combat.
I know the difference between reacting and responding. Reacting gets people hurt. Responding wins. First thing I did was call the VA and get formal documentation of Ranger's service animal certification faxed directly to my apartment management within the hour. Then I contacted a disability rights attorney. Many offer free initial consultations, and laid out the situation.
She stopped me about 4 sentences in.
She filed a false complaint against a documented service animal with the intent of inducing the landlord to remove it, the attorney said. That's potentially interference with a person's use of a service animal. Depending on your state, that carries both civil and criminal exposure. I asked her to say that again.
She did.
In my state, knowingly interfering with a person's use of a service animal is a misdemeanor offense. Filing a false report with intent to cause removal of a service animal can support a civil claim for damages and a complaint to the state's Human Rights Commission for discriminatory interference with a disability accommodation. The attorney told me to document everything, preserve all communications, and to file with the commission. She also told me that under the Fair Housing Act, my building had an affirmative obligation to provide reasonable accommodation for my service animal and could face liability if they had moved to remove him based on a complaint they hadn't properly investigated. I did everything she said.
Documented. Organized. Filed.
But here's where my girlfriend made her second, third, and fourth mistakes. She didn't stop at one complaint. She escalated. Because people like this always escalate when the first move doesn't work. Over the next 4 days I received a second complaint filed with building management claiming Ranger had defecated in the elevator. There are security cameras in that elevator and Ranger was not in it, which the building confirmed within 24 hours. A message sent to my brother, who she had never once reached out to before, telling him I was mentally unstable and that Ranger was a crutch I was using to avoid real treatment, and a post in a local neighborhood Facebook group, using her real name and her real account, with a photo of a German Shepherd, not Ranger, but close enough to be convincing, warning neighbors about an aggressive, unleashed dog in my building, with my building identified by name. Each one of those was a gift. Time-stamped, documented, preserved. The Facebook post was the one that really finished her, because she tagged the building by name, and the building's management saw it before I even had a chance to call them. The property manager called me first. She was no longer careful on the phone. She was apologetic, and then she was flat out angry, not at me. We're going to need her to vacate, the manager said. My girlfriend was listed as an occupant on my lease. And we will cooperate fully with any legal process you pursue. I'll need that in writing, I said. Meanwhile, the attorney had been busy building the civil case. We had the original false complaint with its timestamp. We had the elevator complaint disproved by security footage. We had the Facebook post, public, archived, under her real name, that constituted defamation and further evidence of a pattern of conduct designed to interfere with my disability accommodation. We had the message to my brother as evidence of an attempt to isolate me and undermine my credibility. We had the building's written confirmation that both complaints had been investigated and found to be without merit. The attorney sent her a formal letter of representation. It outlined the civil claim for intentional interference with disability accommodations under the ADA and the Fair Housing Act, the defamation claims stemming from the Facebook post, and the documented pattern of false reporting. It also notified her that a complaint had been filed with the State Human Rights Commission and that the building had confirmed her occupancy would be terminated per lease terms related to fraudulent conduct against another resident. She called me after she got the letter. The voice was not the measured, rehearsed one from our Tuesday dinner. It was scared. "You're actually doing this?" "Yes." "Over a dog? Over a federally protected medical accommodation that you deliberately tried to have removed by filing false reports against a disabled veteran?" "Yes." "I'll tell people you're lying. I'll say you were abusive." I let the silence sit for a second. Every communication between us is documented. The complaint timestamps are public record. There's camera footage that disproves 2 of the 3 reports you filed. And the Facebook post is under your real name on a public group. I paused. "I'd think carefully about what you do next." She hung up. She didn't make any more moves after that. The Human Rights Commission reviewed the complaint over the following months. These processes take time, which is just the reality of how administrative proceedings work, and ultimately issued a finding that she had engaged in discriminatory interference with a disability accommodation. That finding lives in a permanent record. It's not a fine that gets paid and disappears. It follows. The civil matter went to settlement before it reached trial. As part of the settlement, she paid my full legal fees and a damages amount I'm not going to put a number on publicly, but it was enough to cover more than 6 months of Ranger's care, training upkeep, and veterinary costs. She was also required, as a condition of the settlement, to post a retraction in the same Facebook group where she'd put up the original post. I watched her post it from my couch. Ranger's head on my knee. She wrote, "A previous post I made about a dog in my former building was inaccurate. The dog in question is a certified service animal. I apologize for any confusion my post may have caused." Confusion. Sure. That's one word for it. She vacated the apartment about 3 weeks after the letter went out. I helped exactly 0% with that process. The building was cooperative throughout. Once they understood what had actually happened, and I'll give them credit for that, they moved quickly once the legal picture was clear. I don't spend a lot of time thinking about her anymore. What stays with me is the specific shape of what she tried to do. She didn't just issue an ultimatum. When the ultimatum didn't work, she reached for the one thing that could actually hurt me, not emotionally, physically. She tried to remove the animal that keeps me alive. And she did it through paperwork, through systems, through a process she calculated would be slow and bureaucratic enough that I might just give up rather than fight it. She miscalculated who she was dealing with. Ranger is at the foot of my bed right now. He had a good day. So did I. If you made it this far without giving up, you've got more commitment than she had. Go ahead and subscribe because unlike some people in this story, I actually stick around.